Hi, welcome to the Whitey White Guy Show. I'm Whitey. Welcome to my mess. And today I'm going to talk about the film War Games, which came out in 1983, starring Mathew Brodrerick. If you remember the 80s and maybe into the early 90s, there's a few people in this film you might recognize. Michael Madsen has a small part in it, but it's pretty much a Mathew Broderick. There's nobody else in this film. Like I said, it came out in 1983, and it takes place, has to do with the Cold War. And the film starts with Michael Madsen and another guy, and they're in one of the underground facilities where they launch the nukes. And a message comes over to launch the nukes, and the one guy hesitates. You then cut to NORAD. There's a bunch of generals and whatnot, and politicians, I suppose, and they're talking about 22% of the guys in those rooms couldn't bring themselves to launch the nukes and kill millions and millions of people. And so a guy named Dr. McKentrick, who worked with a guy named Dr. Falcon to design something called the Whopper, which let me pull that up real quick. It was the something 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 WORP, which stood for War Operations Plan Response, and it's a supercomputer that strategizes for nuclear war. How to inflict the most casualties, reduce the most casualties, launch from which areas and what sequence, all that kind of stuff. All it does is sit there and strategize. And so Dr. McKentrick wants to replace humans with computers in terms of firing the nukes. That way there will be no hesitation when they need to do so. Cut to Mathew Broderick, who's a high school senior, a smart kid who isn't, he just failed agriculture class or some science, if got an F in a science class. He meets a young girl from the class who also got an F named Allie Sheedy, and they become friends. And she comes over to his house, and he's a computer nerd. And this is where the most science fiction element to this film is that a good-looking Mathew Broderick spends all his time on computers and has a hot girlfriend, which is like, no. But it's a fantasy. I'm a computer nerd who's a good-looking kid and has this hot girlfriend. Like that ever happens. So anyway, Mathew Broderick is trying to show her. Basically hacks into the school computer and changes her grade and his grade, and then he wants to. So he's a hacker. He knows how to do that, and he wants to get into a company's computer called Protovision to see their new games that are coming out real soon. And he's a suburbanite, well-to-do white kid. But this is like they handle this with such a nonchalance while he's doing this, but it's like, dude, that's criminal as hell. It's like, did you not tell her, by the way, you can go to prison for these things? But it's the 80s, so not a lot of people maybe knew that. Maybe, I don't know, crimes weren't as severe. Couldn't tell you. But he thinks he's hacking into a video game company's computer and unintentionally hacks into NORAD over the course of time. So he wants to see these new games. He can't hack and he doesn't know how. He goes to see two guys and they're like, try a back door. They're two real technical smart dudes work at somewhere. I don't think they really say. And he's like, you might try. One guy's like, you might try a back door. And a back door is when you design a software and you put in a password that only you know about. And that way, when they add on additional security, you can come through the back door after they've had the security and bypass that security. So Mathew Broderick spends a really nice montage trying to figure out as much as he can about the guy created named Dr. Falcon, who he's told on the information has passed away, and then he realizes when Ali She points out that Dr. Falcon's son and wife were killed in an accident, he goes, "What's the son's name?" She goes, "Joshua." So he types in Joshua, and he gets into what he thinks. I think at one point he thought he was playing again, getting into play video games because he printed out a list that had like backgammon and chess and stuff. So he's convinced he's hacking into Protovision to play video games, and it says like biochemical, theater war, nuclear war, and all stuff. He thinks he's convinced these are video games that he's gonna play, and then inadvertently he's hacked into the Whopper system and it's playing a simulation. And so at NORAD, while he's sitting there going, yeah, launch the nukes, fire from these subs, NORAD is seeing blips on their radar and stuff that this is actually happening when it's not, it's a simulation. They don't know that. He doesn't know he's causing that. He eventually gets picked up by the FBI. He gets taken to NORAD. He explains, man, I just thought I was playing video games. They're trying to figure out how he got into their system and believe that he's working with the Russians. He manages to escape using his MacGyver-esque smarts. He sits there while the dude's putting in the code and records it, and then hacks into the door to get the door to open. Then he slips out with a tour. Goes to meet up with his girlfriend, and the Whopper is got a countdown, and in so many hours, it's going to launch the nukes in real life. Not a sim anymore. We're playing for real kids. And so Matthew Brodrerick and Alicia, they go to find the actual Dr. Stephen Falcon to get him to tell NORAD that it's, what's going on. And then they end up at NORAD, and they have to outthink the computer to prevent World War III. In a nutshell, that's your film. And so it's first off, I was born. I'd be a year old. I was pretty much being born while they were shooting this, and so it's like super duper nostalgia, but even like pre-nostalgia because it's like the era right before I remember stuff. But it's like it's a lot of fun just to go back in time and be, oh my god, that's right, the '80s. They were so much better than now. And Matthew Broderick gives a really good performance. It's a really he's got to walk a really tight tightrope of being nerdy enough where you believe that he's doing this, but he's still kind of suave and charismatic where you want to, if you're a computer nerd, you want to be this guy. And clearly, part of why this film got made was to promote computers at all, which at that time not a lot of people would have had. Like the rich suburbanite kids might have, but we poor kids sure shit didn't. And this was when their computers are starting to hit into closer to what they are now a bit. This is pre-Bill Gates and Steve Jobs, but very simple computers. But at a point, at one point, computers took up a whole room, and now you have a computer that can sit on your desk. This is kind of that first era, and they're trying to, make computers more mainstream and make them some money. I have every confidence that somebody in the tech industry put, with some cash, they put some money behind this film. So it's very unlikely that. So Matthew Broderick again does a really good job of being a good-looking kid with a good-looking girlfriend, but you can still kind of believe that he would, be sitting there playing computers all day. And it's a tough sell that, on the one hand, he's very good at this, but there's a level of naivete that he accidentally hacks into NORAD. That's a stretch and a half. They do, with the concept of the Whopper, what happens is Stephen Falcon's working with this guy, Dr. McKentrick. Stephen Falcon's the brains behind the operation. Dr. McKentrick is, he wants to use it to advance his career, but really doesn't understand the tech. And so the Whopper is more sophisticated and more capable of being autonomous than Dr. McKentrick understands. So you can see how this kind of opens up. It's a brand new tech to them. Because Dr. Falcon, I guess he resigns or something, and they give him an alias and kind of put him like an equivalent to Widsec. They say he's dead, so nobody knows where he is. He understands the computer, but the rest of these guys don't. And so it's like you could kind of see, okay, that's not 100% possible that a high school senior would accidentally hack into NORAD. He's not technically hacking into NORAD, he's hacking into the Whopper, and the Whopper thinks that he's Dr. Falcon as they're communicating back and forth. So it's like, 1983, computers are new to 99% of the population, even like guys in NORAD and stuff. Like a lot of guys could, wouldn't be able to type on the keyboard with good word speed. So not impossible that at the very early phases of computers being put into place, in the military and places like Norad, maybe before really sophisticated defense systems in terms of keeping out hackers, maybe. But it's still a stretch, but it's fun. This is a fun movie. It's not it's not Schwarzenegger blowing shit up, but it's got some action. It's got some excitement. Ali Sheedy is just kind of nerdy herself enough where it's like, okay, and that's another thing that has to sell. These two kids, you're following them on this adventure. You have to believe that they're a couple and it works. They make it work really well. Really good charisma. The cast, the film looks good for 1983. It's a good looking film. Obviously, the tech by now is heavily outdated, but it doesn't take you out of the film watching it now. It didn't take, I just rewatched it and I didn't have a problem. I was like, oh yeah, back in the day they had those computers, man. I remember when they looked like that. It wasn't something like, oh, this is awful. The graphics or something. It looked fine, looked good. Well paced, tight structure. At no point are you bored watching this movie. It goes from this high school kid to NORAD, and meetings being had. They're on the phone like, what am I supposed to tell the president? Some kid hacked into a computer. Um, but it doesn't make a common flaw in films like this is the generals are just ponces who, despite being generals and are the best military in the world, don't understand simple concepts. Everybody's written plausible and nothing. It's not like you got today where you're a straight white male, so you're a poopy head. Instead, it's like the theme of the film is, yes, we can build all this technology, but at what consequence? Very Jurassic Park, 10 years before Jurassic Park. That film where they're sitting there eating, and it's like Dr. Malcolm's like, you were so obsessed with whether or not you could, you never stopped to think of whether or not you should. It's that conversation for an hour and a half. It's what are, if you replace humans with computers, there's flaws there as well. What if the computer has a malfunction? And in the era when this was all very brand new, what happens when a bunch of people who don't really understand the technology that they have are now in control of it? And so at one point, the Whopper uh, blocks everybody out because it thinks it's defending the country against a Soviet attack. And so it blocks out the humans. Again, very what was it? I can't do that, David. So it's something like that. It's like, here's the consequences of nuclear war, and here's the consequences of new technology when you don't really understand it. And even though computers weren't very sophisticated back then, against a stretch that any of this would happen. But it's an entertaining film, and it's a really good point. You know, don't take humanity out of the loop, and be human. And not have a bloodthirst for blowing everybody up and killing everybody just to say that your side won is kind of the theme there. And at the end, spoilers, the computer, Matthew Brodrerick makes the computer play itself in tic-tac-toe. In order for the computer to learn that there is no way to win in tic-tac-toe. And then the computer realizes, okay, well, there's no real way to win a nuclear war. If everybody's nuking everybody and everybody gets killed, who wins? No one. So it's right on the border of hokey and preaching at you too much, but it doesn't go too far. So the fact that there's a General Behringer, for example, usually the general would be like, we gotta nuke those sons of bitches, blah, 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 white nationalism or something. And instead, he doesn't want to go through with this. He hates what's happening, and this wasn't his idea. It was the idea of a bureaucrat. And but he's, got to protect the country as well. And he's the guy kind of at the end who ultimately says, stand the missiles down. We can't confirm that this is real. So the guy who would usually be the villain, which would be the big general guy, isn't the villain in this film. And I like that. And then the bureaucrat, Dr. McKentrick, isn't necessarily a bad guy. He doesn't want to see the world destroyed in nuclear war. He just doesn't understand what he's got. He doesn't understand the technology himself. And so he's naive, but not a horrible human. So there's really no villains in this film. There's heavies, there's people in the way of the protagonist, but there's no real true villains. And I missed that. Jurassic Park, I brought that up, didn't really have villains. The theme was your intentions are well-meaning, but here's the unintended consequences perhaps you didn't consider or weren't aware that would even be there. Um, as opposed to nowadays where it's like you're born a straight white male, so you're evil. You're a male, so you're evil, and you've stolen from women. Because of you, other people can't do stuff. And it's like, what happened to movies that were like entertaining and fun and had a charm to them like this, where it was like, let's discuss the overall flaws in our thinking. And you're not bad people, you're just not considering this. Let's consider this. Here's some consequences perhaps didn't come across your brain. I miss those days. And so that's why it's current year and I'm watching 1983's War Games with Matthew Brodrerick. So if you haven't seen this film, do go watch it. It's a joy to watch. Everybody involved is giving a really good performance. Again, it's right on the cusp of like, yeah, is a 17-year-old kid gonna accidentally hack in an NORAD? It's that simple. Just put in a pad, but not so much it takes you out of the film at any point. You're right there with you. You're following the kid. You want to see where what comes next. Every scene propels the story forward. Good structure, good pacing. All those technical things I talk about on the show are well done here, in a way that I miss. And clearly, somebody spent a lot of heart and a lot of concern on the screenplay. Remember when people did that? Remember when the screenplay wasn't the last thing you took into consideration? Oh, look, we've got this product placement. It's some Harry Potter book or something, and we have an actor attached to it. Let's throw 100 million at it and see what it does. Okay, great. We'll start on the screenplay next week. I miss the days when somebody just came up with a really nice screenplay and tight, put a lot of effort into it, heart and concern. You can tell it's there. You can tell the person or people writing the screenplay here really cared about the subject matter and understood it well enough to put together a tight story. So, real quick shout out to them. Written by Lawrence Lasker and Walter F. Parks and directed by John Badham. I think it's probably Badham. It stars Matthew Broderick, Dabney Coleman, John Wood, Alan Sheedy. And again, there's Mike Madsen's got a scene early in the film. Really young Michael Madsen for you Michael Madsen fans. So that's it. War Games from 1983 starring Matthew Broderick. Go check this out. It's a lot of fun. If you're my age, a lot of the nostalgia. If you're younger than 20 years old, it's a world you probably didn't know frapping existed called the 80s. So go check it out. Thank you for watching. Like, subscribe, all that stuff. Share with your friends. It's the Whitey White Guy Show. I'm Whitey. Thanks for watching. Cheers.